All right. Before we start, City Council just met on 2 closed session items, and there's nothing to report out at this time. Good evening, and thank you for viewing the August 18th regular meeting of the Arcata City Council. City Council meeting is being held as a teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the current surge of Delta variant of the COVID-19 virus. If you wish to make public comment tonight during the meeting, either at 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. If you are logged onto the Zoom meeting webinar, click on Raise Your Hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it's time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. You can also access the meeting by phone, call the number at the bottom of the screen, enter the meeting ID, also at the bottom of the screen. Press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it's time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes to comment. And if you care to, please join me in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we please have a roll call?
Mayor Watson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
All present.
Great. Next, we have early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. Please raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or press *9 if you're calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Yes, we do. First speaker is Bill Hull. Go ahead, Bill. You'll have 2 minutes, please.
Hello. I assume you can hear me.
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm just testing. Okay. Council, Mayor, Bill Hull. I'm preservation specialist. I live in Eureka, and I am just commenting on. I wanted to congratulate and say how wonderful it is, the care and good stewardship of taking apart the granite steps under the McKinley statue and having such good foresight to have the right quality masons there to expedite and take care of the that historic stone. It was wonderful to see, and I just wanted to say thank you. And I look forward to seeing potentially some future wonderful things in reuse with that, because it's really well over 100 years of Arcata history and use. And I just wanted to congratulate everybody. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Just check
Yeah.
if there is anyone else that would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda this evening. See no other speakers, Mayor. Oh,
Right, next.
Sorry, we do have somebody. Screen name Doug. Doug, you'll have 2 minutes, please. Doug, are you able to unmute?
Oh, sorry about that.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Doug Hartley. I am the site manager of Health Sport in Arcata, and I just wanted to make comment about the growth of the homeless situation that we're finding impacting our facility and also the community center and the parking lot in that surrounding area. And I've been with Health Sport now since its inception in 1992, and really with the pandemic lately, the homeless population within our boundaries has grown tremendously, and is creating impact for our business. I have concerns raised every day from our membership, from our staff. It is affecting business. And I believe we could set an agenda item for the future where we could have maybe further public comment about maybe solutions we might be able to put forth, but particularly maybe an ordinance that would allow for a safe place for the homeless. I do believe there needs to be a place for them where they feel safe and not harassed and so forth. But I also feel that that place needs to be such that it does not negatively impact businesses or places such as the community center. And also something we've had to call the police out numerous times, and they're very gracious and so forth, and they're there. However, there's not a lot they can do to enforce the concerns of our customers and so forth. So particularly maybe an ordinance that they could follow, therefore they could enforce some things that would be more business friendly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
Later on in tonight's meeting, under the ARPA agenda item, we'll be talking about the homelessness solutions we're working on a little bit and what we might be able to use funding for.
We do have another speaker, Mayor.
All right.
Phone in caller, call-in user 2, please go ahead. Can you unmute, caller?
Yes, this is Oz of Arcata City Council. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Tonight I'd like to speak more to the public policy that I spoke to last time, and I'm suggesting tonight that the council seriously consider another tool in public safety toolbox to give officers recommendations for a legal, safe place to sleep at night with protection and service, not the PPP syndrome we've always had, persecution, prosecution, and possibly worse. It hasn't worked. The criminalization of the homeless started years ago and promised to end homelessness, which is a not bad word, unhoused conditions. There is no one homeless. I was born home. You were born home. They were born home. It's only policy that can keep people unhoused. A legal, safe place to sleep with services at night and through the day so that they can get on their way to housing, jobs, mental health, drug abuse services, and get this policy, get it right. It's broken. We're spending too much money on public safety and they can't do anything about the problem because it's your policy that's the problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Oz. Any more speakers?
No more speakers, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of any of these items. Discussion is required. That item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 21st, 2021. B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 28, 2021. C, biweekly report on general warrants. D, declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. E, adopt resolution number 212-07 supporting the Wiyot tribe's declaration of a state of emergency on the Budawat Mad River in response to severe drought conditions. Approve agreement for professional engineering services by Dr. Robert Gearhart, DBA Hydro Resources, in the amount of $49,999 for fiscal year 2021-2022, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents. G, adopt resolution number 212-08, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the class and pay resolution, International Union of Operating Engineers, local number 3, to reflect title changes to secretary and administrative assistant. And adopt resolution number 212-09, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution, management, mid-management, confidential, and appointed employees. Authorize the city manager to enter into real property negotiations for assessors parcels numbers 021-011-003, -004, -005, -006, 021-121-002, -006, 501-044-004, and 503-211-032-034. And I adopt resolution number 212-09, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata requesting the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors call for an election on the question of renewing the countywide abandoned vehicle abatement fee to be scheduled in conjunction with the June 7, 2022 primary election. Is there any council member that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Any members of staff, any members of the public that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, may we please have a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Right, we have a motion and a second. And well, I guess we'll just do roll call now that we're back on Zoom. Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Matthews.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And moving on to old business, introduce ordinance number 1547, amending the Chapman House Historic Landmark Ordinance. May I please have a staff report?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you tonight is the consideration for introduction of ordinance number 1547, which would amend the Chapman House Historic Landmark Ordinance. Staff is recommending that you consider a staff report, take a presentation from the applicant, consider public comment, and introduce ordinance 1547, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Chapman House Landmark Ordinance, waive reading the text, and consent to read by title only. I did focus the bulk of the written staff report on sort of the policy underpinnings, and that's what I wanted to sort of address real quickly here. I believe the applicant has some items to say about the project specifically. Ordinance 1547 specifically would exempt the Chapman House from the rental cap vacation rental ordinance cap of 100. All the permits would still be required. It'd still have to go through the same process that anyone else would have to go through. But that was the incentive that the City Council approved previously when it first adopted the landmark ordinance prior to the adoption of the vacation rental ordinance. The concept there was to embed certain uses, including vacation rental and several others that are listed in Exhibit 3 of the original ordinance, which is attachment B to your staff report, to sort of future-proof them against changes to the land use code. And we just didn't consider that when we were adopting the short stay vacation rental ordinance. So essentially, the kind of question that, the policy question boils down to, what is at stake here? We're balancing housing versus historic resources. And both of these policy areas, not only does this council care deeply about, but, it's embedded in our general plan and our land use code. These are special areas, policy areas, where we actually incentivize developments that will provide either affordable housing or historic preservation. And so these, here's a house, it's old, we're pitting these two policy areas against one another. So the historic preservation is rooted in the general plan and the historic preservation element. And in that element, we provide for special uses to ensure preservation. It gives a little bit of flexibility to those resources. Those preservation policies were adopted into the land use code, and I've given you references within the staff report. I'm not going to belabor those. But the rationale was that the added cost of a historic resource, maintaining that, landmarking it, keep preserving it over time, warrants these special incentives that we would provide. And those incentives aren't available to the general public. And that was a policy-driven decision in the land use code. I do want to just share with you real quick a very short slideshow. And really the point of this slideshow is just to identify for you that, and I'm hoping you can see the whole screen. It looks a little odd on my side. But just to share with you that regardless of zoning district, the city has several examples of historic homes that have been converted to commercial purposes. Many of these are in areas where we've actually zoned these general commercial. So the first three that we looked at are general commercial. This one here is a doctor's office, or was converted to a doctor's office, explicitly listed in the ordinance that landmarked that structure. And so even though it's in a residential zoning district, it's allowed to be a commercial property. Here's the Phillips house. It's actually on a public facilities property. So there are several examples of these throughout the city where either through traditional zoning or through the landmarking process, we've authorized other uses beyond the use as a house. And in effect, what our policy does is it treats a historic resource as either, and it leaves it up to either the underlying zoning or this landmarking process to the discretion of the owner to choose which of those is going to be more viable for protecting that resource. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the ordinance, the staff report, the policy, or anything else you have, but I know that the applicant has a short presentation that they'd like to present as well.
Yeah, unless there's any burning questions, let's go ahead and get the presentation from the applicant before we go to the council.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Scott and Sandy. Can you unmute yourself?
Good evening. I'm Sandy Hunt, and my husband Scott and I own the Chapman house. I'd like to first thank each of you for meeting with us one-on-one. Taking time from your busy schedule shows that you have a genuine interest in understanding the items presented. We purchased the Chapman property from descendants of John Chapman, who acquired the property around 1883 from Thomas Bear. We were amazed that the property had stayed in the Chapman family for 134 years. What attracted us to the property was its history as well as its unique Italianate architecture. As you can see from the photos or video that are being shown, which were taken shortly after the purchase, the house still had all its original bones. The fact that it remained largely in its original state was another attraction for us. Building began during the period from 1874 to 1876, and its original construction didn't include plumbing or electricity. These were added much later and were quite limited. We assembled a team of professionals who were not only craftsmen, but historians in their own right. People like Bob Felter, Bill Hull, and Alex Stillman kept us true to the task at hand, and our architect Martha Jane applied her gentle persuasion at just the right times. We carefully restored all the exterior windows and searched for wavy glass to replace broken panes. Countless hours were spent on those windows, and now they all function just like they originally did when first installed back in the 1870s. We brought back the widow's walk and the railings above the front porch, all from period old-growth redwood. The original chimneys had to be removed when we lifted the house and put a new foundation under it. We scaled the new ones from old pictures to make sure they were accurate. The interior and exterior of the house is all period correct and was recently featured on the State Office of Historic Preservation website. The rigorous process of documentation and meticulous rehabilitation was a much bigger task than we ever imagined. Having said that, the Chapman house was one of the most gratifying things we've ever done. Thank you.
Hi, this is Scott Hunt. We were new to historic preservation as it relates to the city of Arcata. Through the permitting process and various meetings with city staff, we learned about historic preservation in Arcata and read on the city's website that, quote, it is committed to the maintenance and preservation of local historic properties and landmarks that continue to define the character of our city, end quote. The Chapman House is a historic preservation project that has statewide recognition. In 2018, the city of Arcata had the vision to enter into a contract with Sandy and I in order to encourage us to have our property designated a local landmark. One of the incentives was that the property could be used for short-term stays. In May of 2021, City Council adopted an ordinance that limits the number of short stay rentals in Arcata. In doing so, they unintentionally took away this incentive. When this was discovered, city staff was apologetic and worked to remedy the situation with a new ordinance, the one before you tonight. Unfortunately, this topic has become bigger than city staff's attempt at protecting our original incentive package. The subject of affordable housing has entered the conversation, and although a critical topic, it's not directly relevant to the Chapman House. Our vision for the property was to rehabilitate a beautiful and significant historic home to its former glory and create a property that the community could enjoy in a variety of different ways. We would not have approached the project the way we did without the flexibilities granted to us by the city. We spent a lot of money on the renovation, knowing that there could be market risk. What we didn't anticipate was the risk of losing an incentive that was awarded to us by City Council. The investment in historic preservation is long-term, and incentives need to ride along with that investment, regardless of who owns it into the future. We're thrilled that our preservation project has extended on to other surrounding properties. The house next to Chapman, Helen's house, now offers long-term housing after being vacant for over 10 years. We believe that historic preservation sends a message not only to the community, but to those who visit. And that message is, we care. By approving the proposed ordinance, the city will be doing nothing more than honoring the deal it made with us when we agreed to rehabilitate the Chapman house. If the council rejects the ordinance, a chilling message will be sent to the historic preservation community and all citizens of Arcata that the city cannot be trusted to honor its commitments. We should all work together to ensure that Arcata preserves its history, maximizes its potential, and treats everyone fairly. We ask for your support and vote in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take public comment now as well.
Okay, our first commenter will be Vanessa, and then after that we have Dennis. Go ahead, Vanessa.
My name is Vanessa Griffin, and I've had the pleasure of owning a business across from the Chapman House for the last 5 years. I've listened to craftspeople talk about how proud they are to work for people with such a commitment to the highest quality, and what a delight it is to participate in restoring such a historic building. I've watched countless visitors and locals alike be excited to see the house come to life. I particularly love the copper flashing at sunset, and nearly everyone that passes stops to admire both the landscaping and the house itself. I've had the honor of serving guests from out of town and those returning to the area. They're proud to show off a place where they went to school and celebrate graduations, weddings, countless huge events. Beautiful lodging for people out of the area and those returning to town, steps away from the best Arcata has to offer. It would seem beneficial that the Chapman House retain the incentives associated with landmark status, namely vacation rentals without limitation. It's a powerful incentive for me to work across the street. It's a beautiful building. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Next will be Dennis, and then after that we have a call-in. Go ahead, please, Dennis. 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dennis Rael, and I speak to you from a variety of hats. One, I'm the founder and one of the owners of Los Bagels, and I've been backed up to that property for 38 years, and to see it slowly deteriorate as time went on, and to see the condition that it's in now and what it's done to the historic part of the neighborhood is amazing. I also am a co-owner of Helen's house, a neighbor to the Chapman house. And part of our incentive to redo that house and to bring it back to life, like Scott said, it had been vacant for 10 years. And to bring that back to life and have it be a long-term rental has been a joy and a pleasure, having known Helen till she passed away at 103 in that house. But I think it sends a message to the entire community, not just the business community, but also our community as far as supporting the history that we do have. All that set aside, I understand the need for more and more housing and the crunch on the entire community. I've lived here for over 40 years and saw it slowly deteriorate, and we need to work on that. But I think it's a separate issue. And I think it's really important for the city council, once a resolution is set up, that they don't go back and change that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have a phone caller in, and after that will be Alex. Go ahead, phone caller. Can you unmute yourself?
Good evening. My name is Julie Besaid Alcock, and although I'm a member of the City of Arcata's Planning Commission, I am speaking as a lifelong citizen of Arcata. Regarding the Chapman House and Ordinance 1528, which was the original ordinance, I just want to point out that this ordinance was not only approved by the Historic Landmarks Committee, but also by the Planning Commission unanimously. Both committee and commission members agreed that the vacation stay use was just one of the, quote, authorized principally permitted uses, end quote, and consistent with the general plan. I would like to encourage you to approve Ordinance 1548, allowing the Chapman House to maintain their vacation stay status indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alex. Go ahead, please, Alex.
Alex Stillman. Welcome or hello to you all. I just wanted to mention in the 1970s, when I was elected to the council in 72, there was a lot of concern about the historic buildings in our community, and many of them were being considered for demolition. So we thought it would be really important to create an ordinance that would allow people to use these buildings for commercial uses. So when you go up into Northtown on the right-hand side, you'll see many of them are office buildings, or house offices, I should say, and you'll also see some of them are residential. We have some other offices that are dental on the bottom and residential on the top. We have quite a mix, and I feel from the 1970s that when we came up with that idea that we really saved our built environment, our historic environment. And the Arcata Chamber of Commerce, once when they had a walking map, they had a tour of all the different houses and within a certain parameters of Arcata. And I would see people out walking all the time for that. And so the Nixon House, which is across the street from the Chapman House, Dan and Donna Hauser are considering or working right now on putting their house on the National Register of Historic Places. And then on the other side, I always called it the Davis House, the Helen Davis House, is the chiropractic office. And some new people have purchased that, and they've been upgrading that building, and especially the living on the second floor. So what Vanessa says about what has happened in the neighborhood, I feel like we've seen a resurgence. And that's what you always hope when you have an area and somebody comes in, it doesn't matter what the area is, and they start to paint their house or do their landscaping, other people pick up on that. And the Chapman House did that for this neighborhood. And so I support you all supporting 1547, the ordinance. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to comment on this item? Oh, we have Bill. Go ahead, please, Bill. Hi, Bill. Can you unmute yourself?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm trying to get back to, I'm trying to do this and read. Excuse me, I got lost on trying to do two things on the computer.
Sure. Let us know when you're ready.
Yeah, I submitted a letter as to the planning department. I think you all have it in your packet, and I don't want to read the whole. I don't want to take time and read the whole letter. I just was trying to make a few points that I wish I could find them. Sorry, I just was in the process of, excuse me for blumbering here, but I really, basically, I really want to support what city staff has put together, and not only the staffer recommendation, but also the June Planning Commission resolution, the PC 2103. And I think that considering in May, this year, the city council adopted Ordinance 1545 that limits short stay rentals. I don't know. I really, being a major part of this project, I was invited into it, and I actually worked directly with city staff, and I've worked with the National Park Service and the state parks, Office of Historic Preservation, and basically all the technical writing that went into these applications, and writing the historic story of the Chapman House, as well as helping to develop and negotiate all the planning that went into what we developed as far as the uses, which ultimately, even the historic landmarks nomination, I was involved in all of this. And so my heart's very much into what we decided on. And I really think that it was done in good faith and very professionally. And I personally think this is something where we should be careful about changing policy that we set up to honor something that was so incredibly well done, and such a really just a shining jewel in the Arcata palette. I mean, it's one of the best preserved historic buildings in the city, and it'll maintain that because it's been allowed to have some incentives that really will help to afford this into the future.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. That's our 2-minute timer for each speaker.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not
public
seeing
comment?
any other commenters.
All right, that will bring it back to the council. How about Council Member Schaefer? Oh, you don't have to go first. I'll pick somebody else.
I don't want to go first. I feel like I always go first. No. No, I can go first. I've actually, like, my notes are like a pros and cons list. I've written, I was like, well, if this, then this argument goes this way. And then, it's kind of just a difficult one because, yes, this is, the historical preservation that gives these entitlements has been something that has been in place in our community for a long time. And I respect that as a person that majored in history at college and is a history teacher and a lover of local history and all of that. I can appreciate the beautiful work that has been done. I also only live 2 blocks away from the Chapman House, so I had got to see the progress and get to enjoy walking by a beautiful place pretty much every day. But also, when this historical preservation ordinance, as I think Alex Stillman said, yeah, it was into conception back in the 70s, and Airbnb didn't exist in the 70s, and kind of the strain that we see a lot of Airbnbs putting on local towns and taking away from some housing stock, but also, I mean, we talk about affordable housing, but also, I mean, housing for families and housing for professionals that want to move to our community. I mean, in my conversations that I had with the Hunts, I mean, also being able to see some sort of, there's you have long-term rental, you have short-term rental, and then there's the short long-term rental. I mean, being able to attract doctors, traveling nurses, a lot of traveling medical professionals that come up here to be able to have available housing stock for them as well, not just through, Airbnb. But, obviously I really respect the reports and the opinions of both the Planning Commission and the Historical Landmark Committee. And also, just seeing where we are currently with this ordinance, we're not really anywhere near reaching a cap as well. So even if this ordinance didn't go through tonight, I mean, I think it would be very easy for new owners to be able to operate this as an Airbnb and be safely within the cap, and have that. And so, I'm kind of sitting in a place where I really, want to straddle the line here and kind of, figure out what the compromise is, rather than just saying in perpetuity, we are going to basically let this be a 3-bedroom hotel. Which thus kind of does change the zoning of the property. It's not really residential anymore. It's become a business. and, you know, operating it as a 3-bedroom hotel basically. And so, you know, where I kind of feel comfortable right now, and I would love to, obviously, you know, I went first, so I'm the one talking a lot right now, but to, you know, hear where everybody else stands. And perhaps, you know, we received some public comment that suggested that there could be perhaps a sunset date on this ordinance, and, you know, granting maybe not forever that they could be a short-term rental, but, you know, for up to 10 years to recoup on those, you know, costs for this historical renovation and reconstruction of this beautiful home. And I think, you know, operating it for 10 years as a 3-bedroom hotel, basically, I mean, could recoup a lot of that investment that was put in. So yeah, I'll say that for now and hear what everybody else has to say.
Great. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
So I think based on our prior agreements with them and the recommendations of both the committees that weighed in, I'm leaning towards supporting the ordinance that's put before us. I know we do have a housing crisis, and I'm in weekly housing meetings discussing those. But there's also, you know, when you look, I think one of the things that really kind of pushed me over the deciding line was when you look at the other uses that it can have. Like, you know, we could say it can't, you know, we could take away the opportunity to be a vacation rental in the future, but it could be a restaurant, a retail store, lots of other things. It doesn't, you know, us saying it can't, you know, not granting them that it could be a vacation rental doesn't mean it'll turn into housing. So that's not necessarily the case. So just kind of looking at the overall picture of the things that it still could be in order to, you know, with our past agreements for them. I mean, I think there are times that we do need to go back and change things. There are definitely times that past ordinances need to be changed. And I just don't think that this is one of those times. So, you know, I think that we should honor our agreement with the Hunt family.
All right, Councilmember Goldstein.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I think it's really important to remember we're not deciding tonight whether this property can or cannot be a vacation rental. And so, as Councilmember Schaefer pointed out, we still have plenty of availability, as far as I'm aware, within our cap that we put on short stay rentals. And so, I think that, I mean, I'm really proud of that short stay or a rental ordinance that we worked on. I think that, you know, it was a really important step, and I'm just not sure I'm comfortable giving an exception, even if it was a previously talked about exception, because I do think that I don't want to open up the door for more exceptions or more arguments for others to come forward and say, well, what about my property? What about my property? Because I do think that that ordinance that we passed back in May is a really important step for Arcata and our housing crisis. I think that I would have different feelings if it was that they couldn't rent at all as a short stay rental, but knowing that we have available permits within our cap, I think that it still absolutely can be an Airbnb or any of the other many uses that you all have talked about. And so yeah, I mean, I completely understand, you know, both sides and where you're coming from, but to me, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with starting to make exceptions to that really important ordinance.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews.
Hi, first of all, I just would like to thank everybody for presenting such compelling facts behind this. The property itself is beautiful, and you know, I've done a lot of thinking about this ordinance, and especially since this is going to be my first big decision. But I definitely feel like just from the amount of historic work that was put into this property, along with the prior agreements that we've had, looking at that block and seeing how it kind of spurred kind of rebirth of that street. And I am inclined to say yes to the approving this ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I see it from both sides. And I feel like trying to find some kind of compromise. I mean, I would go along with Councilmember Schaefer's suggestion of doing a sunset date. So again, there's still a lot of permits to be had. You know, a sunset date. I mean, my understanding is what's really going on here is that, which I guess what hasn't been mentioned, is that the property is being sold. And the new owners will only buy it if they can operate as an Airbnb, and they're concerned about the permitting. So I feel like if we give it a 10-year sunset date, I feel like that's a fair amount of time for a new owner to purchase the property and have it and consider whether or not they want to keep it. And again, it's very likely that there will still be available permits as well. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I do like the idea of a 10-year sunset date. I think that is completely reasonable.
Okay.
I'm also much more comfortable moving forward with the idea of a sunset date. I think it is a fair compromise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can I make a motion?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I move that we approve ordinance number 1547, an ordinance of the City Council amending the Chapman House Historic Landmark Ordinance, waive reading of the text, with a 10-year sunset date from adoption of the ordinance.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the way you may want to amend the language inside the ordinance, because as I understood what you just said is that you want to actually allow the exemption from the cap for a period of 10 years. You don't want to completely eliminate the landmark ordinance in 10 years. Is that correct?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to do what you said.
Can you pull up, do you want to pull up the ordinance, David?
Yeah.
And then also as a reminder, Councilmember Schaefer, you would be introducing the ordinance tonight, and adoption will come on the consent calendar at a future meeting.
Yeah, well, and that's, I guess, just a clarification question too. I mean, yeah, so the 10 years would be from date of adoption, which I think is what I kind of meant to say, but tripped over my words a little bit, but yeah.
Or date of effective date.
Or is it from date of, or is it from this date? You know, is the 10 years from this date, or is it from the date of adoption once we adopt it via consent?
It's whatever you want it to be. But,
okay. Yeah.
Because you're setting the sunset, so you can make it 10 years from wherever you want it.
Okay, so you got to help me out here, folks.
Yeah.
No.
So what I guess what I would suggest is in this bullet number 1, it reads, vacation rental up to 3 units may be operated as vacation rentals. The units shall be exempt from the permit cap
until
for a period of 10 years expiring, and then insert date, but shall be subject to all of the permit requirements and regulations established by municipal code, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want it to be 10 years
so
from...
I move for that. I mean, I think in the sense, I mean, we can discuss this too, but I mean, I think 10 years from when when we adopt this would make the most sense to me.
Okay.
But
so August 18th, 2031.
No, it's being introduced on August 18th.
So it'd be either September 1st,
adopted.
2031 or October 1st, 2031, if you want it from the date of it going into effect. But Vice Mayor Atkins-Salazar also has her hand up.
No, mine is actually we can finish up this process because mine's just going to muddy the waters a little bit more.
So I'm sorry, I missed whether you wanted it from the date of the effective date or the adoption date. And it's a difference of 30 days or 60 days either way. So it's probably de minimis in the owner's minds.
Let's say whatever gives them more time.
Okay, so that would be October 1st, 2031.
Okay.
Yeah, 2031 sounds like a long ways away.
Yeah. I mean, okay. And so then in that case, I mean, that sounds all good. I agree with that. That's the motion I want to make. So what, do I repeat it? Do I attempt to repeat it? What should I say? I don't, sorry guys.
How about if I read it back to you, and if it sounds acceptable, you can say as amended.
Okay. Okay.
So vacation rental, up to 3 units may be operated as vacation rentals. The units shall be exempt from the permit cap for a period of 10 years until October 1, 2031. And so your introduction would read, introduce ordinance number 1547, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Chapman House landmark ordinance, waive reading the text and consent to read by title only as amended.
Okay. Great. And yes, I like the date as amended. Sounds good. And then, yeah, so I move that we introduce ordinance number 1547, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Chapman House landmark ordinance, waive reading of the text, consent to read by title only as amended.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion in a second. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I think my point is probably moot by now. I was going to.
Do you have more comments? I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I just by listening to what everybody said, I think I'm outvoted here. But I was going to make a motion to introduce the ordinance as is. But I just from what everybody has said, I don't think that it's that's going to go through. So I'm fine.
Okay. How do you vote?
I would like to. I think that we should introduce the ordinance as is. So I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Councilmember Matthews. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm nervous. I'm voting for the amended.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay. Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right. Yeah, we had differing opinions on this. I'm glad we were able to find a compromise that most of us are happy with.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, staff. Thanks, David.
And I just to add in, I think that a compromise is better than straight up no. So that's better.
Let's see what we have next. So next, it looks like we have receive an update and provide direction on potential dog park sites. May I please have a staff report from Environmental Services Director Singapore.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for the opportunity to provide an update on potential dog park locations within the city. It's recommended that the council receive a brief presentation as well as comments from members of the Arcata Dog Park Working Group, one of which is here tonight, accept public comment and then direct staff as necessary. Great. So hopefully you can see a screen here. Great. Well, exploring the location for a dog park in Arcata has long history, and I think a key thing is that off-leash dog areas are becoming much more popular and really a common asset in many communities. Here in Humboldt County, both Eureka and Fortuna and McKinleyville have designated off-leash dog parks, and they really provide an important amenity for many community members. They really can also reduce the impact of off-leash dogs on trails and in other public grounds. It can be an important asset for residents that may not have a backyard for their dog to run. And it also can be an economic driver and visitor serving facility, as families these days are often really traveling with dogs. Great, so for history and just kind of current status, here in the city, we have nearly 40 miles of trails in the community forest and the marsh and the Humboldt Bay Trail, and 30 neighborhood and community parks, all of more places that dogs are allowed on leash. But in the 2010 Arcata Parks and Recreation Facilities Plan, it was really identified that an off-leash dog area was a top facility need. So the Public Works Department then, and now the Environmental Services Department, studied the potential for creating a dog park leash-free area with the assistance of a community group that formed, the Arcata Dog Park Working Group. And then in the years 2014, 2015, the city had an identified goal to identify potential sites for a dog park within existing city facilities. In 2015, the Dog Park Working Group put together a presentation with city staff to the City Council outlining the goals and benefits of a potential off-leash area, as well as a really thorough analysis of pros and cons of potential locations. So key criteria were really identified by the working group and by city staff for successful dog park siting and maintenance. The working group conducted a lot of outreach to community members and businesses and raised support for the project, and really looked at a number of locations, which I'll touch on briefly in a minute. And then council then in 2015 provided direction to really pursue a dog park planning at the Little Lakes property on South I Street. So I just wanted to touch on some of the key criteria that have been discussed. And the first really being that a dog park could augment existing city facilities or really fit in with the adjoining neighborhood. Noise can certainly be a concern. And so guidance is often, if possible, to locate outside of a residential neighborhood, or if co-located, kind of post potential times of use. So dog parks come in many sizes, and they can be really small, from 500 square feet to over 10 acres. But ideally, about 3 acres minimum, and potential for separate areas for small dogs and bigger dogs. But there could be, an opportunity for more of an interim or a phased approach, and looking at 1 to 2 acres to begin with. Another key consideration is having fencing. 4 to 6 feet kind of has been some of the research that we have done, and planning for that, and thinking about how that may impact other kind of visual amenities in the area. But that's both a safety need as well as an amenity. Another is for really accessibility and clear sight lines, of having a site that is mostly flat for both access for dogs and humans across the property, and really kind of observation, and for dog owners to do their own work of dog maintenance and picking up dog poop and other things. Another key component that the working group really identified was for the park to be centrally located, easy to find, clear directional signage. Another being parking nearby, and definitely ADA accessible parking. And then some key park amenities that you would often find within a park, but that would be specific for a dog park as well: doggy pot stations, benches, water fountain, those amenities as well. So previously, both city staff and the working group had looked at potential locations. Again, the Little Lakes property, the Mount Trashmore within the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary, a location at Ennis Park, an area near the Arcata Community Center, Shea Park, Sunnybrae Park, Valley West Park, and D Street Linear Park. Another goal was to really consider the potential for having a dog park location in both north and southern Arcata. And after looking at pros and cons of those particular sites, council really provided direction at the time to explore the Little Lakes property. It is accessible from downtown, just down I Street, and really is at the entrance to the Arcata Marsh. So it could really enhance that current public facility and connect to trails within the marsh. It's also a larger open area, flat area for sight lines and flexibility in designing park amenities. And so this site is the site of the former Little Lakes Industries mill, and there's no contamination. The city's been progressing towards cleanup of this site. The Community Development Department has been leading efforts to characterize and remediate the site. The city received an EPA grant to perform a brownfields assessment. And the first step of that was really to characterize contamination on site and work towards developing a cleanup plan to plan for future beneficial uses. That grant is nearly complete and has a draft site cleanup plan developed. And the city also submitted to the EPA a cleanup grant that was not immediately successful, though the city is currently preparing to resubmit to that funding source. Also, additional testing is currently underway to determine if it may be possible if a section of the property may be able to be cleared in advance of the contamination being cleaned up in other areas of the property. So that could still be explored. And while planning had progressed for a dog park at this location, any future potential for locating off-leash area here would need to plan along with any other potential uses for other sections of the Little Lakes property, and exploring a change in zoning and a coastal development permit, but this all could be achievable. And so again, as I'd mentioned, during the time of 2015, upwards towards the end of 2018, the Arcata Dog Park Group had submitted potential designs for the site, and city staff had looked at opportunities of phasing a dog park in at specific areas on the property. And so I did want to, just because this was looking at an update of potential dog park sites, also to look at some of the locations that were previously explored and maybe some other potential locations the city had not looked at much in the past. And many of these are perhaps a smaller location that could serve in an interim capacity until such time as environmental cleanup occurs on Little Lakes. But I will really say that no additional community outreach has yet occurred about these additional proposed locations. So this is just an update, and staff will be looking for further direction. So one location that many of us might drive or walk by and not notice is an area of Caltrans right-of-way relinquishment that is along 7th Street, just south of City Hall. It's downtown, it's already fenced. It would need a gate to access from 7th Street from the public right-of-way. It is a very small location. ADA public parking may not be or would need to really be explored. But this is a potential small location close to downtown. Another is 14th and Union. It's adjacent to the entrance to Redwood Park. It is part of Redwood Park, though a separate maintained area. Parking may be limited as it's directly adjacent to HSU. There is no fencing, and adding fencing would certainly change the aesthetics of the entrance, to this, really a beautiful park entrance. And no outreach has yet been done with neighbors, but is accessible and walkable from HSU and existing park facilities. This location at 7th and Union is just a part of the Arcata Community Center and Sports Complex. It is, between what we think of as the Community Center and 7th Street. It is along a hillside. It's a larger open space. It could really be contiguous with the sports complex and community center, but it is steep, especially reached from the community center in the bottom, and that may be more difficult for members or community members with mobility issues to access areas of the park, but is an open space to potentially consider, and this was one of the locations previously considered. Another location previously considered was the southern part of D Street Linear Park in between D Street and 101. It has a long orientation for dogs to run. It is partially fenced along the Caltrans 101 right-of-way. Street parking is limited. It is very walkable from downtown. And because of kind of many of these characteristics, in 2017, the city invited neighbors to attend the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting at the D Street Community Center to provide thoughts on this proposed location. And neighbors were less supportive at that time of this location being considered. Another location that was not previously explored a lot was Stewart Park. It's located in central, North Arcata. Some fencing already exists on the east and south boundaries. It serves multiple park users, has a busy playground, big open area, but again, no outreach has yet been conducted in neighborhoods adjacent. Valley West Park is another location that was previously explored. It's very accessible from Valley West neighborhoods and also visitor serving hotels. It could provide a northern Arcata dog park location. This location is wet in the winter, and that would pose maybe one of the greatest challenges. It's also directly adjacent to the current site of a Laurel Tree Charter School that does utilize this park, but perhaps there could be separate areas or just different hours of use. Great, so for development of a dog park and looking at costs for a very small space that may be already set up with fencing, I think our costs would be more minimal. And just in our research, it was really looking at probably development costs being at the very minimum about $25,000 upwards towards $100,000 per acre to develop. Some of those key development things being fencing, as I talked about, some of those key park amenities, ADA accessibility, and then planning for maintenance of the ground, and just whether that's a substrate, how we would plan for the use of that park ground space. And then for maintenance, with any new park or new facility, there are always additional maintenance costs. And we really would seek collaborative partnerships with community groups and local businesses. And the Arcata Dog Park Working Group has very much offered this assistance in both development and maintenance. So really, we could look at developing agreements to assist with maintenance more in the long term. But likely, maybe additional maintenance costs per year could be upwards of $15,000 per year and would need to be planned for and budgeted. I did, just since we're talking about parks, I did just want to bring up what some of our current park priorities are in our fiscal year 21-22 goals and budget. And so we have many parks and beautification goals right now. Our kind of first two on the list are for Shea Park and Redwood Park, undergoing larger upgrades. And so those are exciting projects. And also Carlson Park in Northern Valley West. We're really focused on grant seeking for river access and playground in the Valley West area. Larson Park will be undergoing resurfacing of tennis courts and pickleball courts next month. We're working on invasives removal with the neighborhood at Sunnybray Park, and then beautification priorities being within Valley West, HSU corridor, and H Street. So just a focus on what our current park priorities have been this year. So for next steps, would love to or would recommend that the council hear comments from a member of the Arcata Dog Park Working Group here tonight, and that is Lynette Chin, and receive comments from members of the public, and then really provide further direction to the department on whether to further support a dog park siting at the identified location of Little Lakes, and or continue to examine other potential dog park locations through community outreach and research. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily. So did I understand it was now, are the dog park people gonna talk? Is that what I heard?
Yes, so I was recommending that you next hear from Lynette Chen.
There's Lynette. Cool, excellent. Go ahead, Lynette.
Hi, so I have a couple of comments. One is that was a super thorough job of reviewing in a very concise way the last 10 years of trying to get a dog park at the city of Arcata. And I would also like to say the one thing that I didn't hear was what we were really pushing for, the Arcata Dog Park Working Group, was a regional scale dog park. So we have no quarrel with the neighborhood dog park, D Street Linear Park, the little one just south of City Hall. That sounds fine for a neighborhood dog park. But what we were really hoping for was a regional scale, multiple acre, the kind of dog park that attracts dog tourism, of which there is a fair amount. And so that's the one of the major factors that I think led the city council to identify the Little Lake Industries property as the best of the bunch. If anybody has any questions about any of those sites, like, I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
All right, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment?
We do, Mayor. We have at least a couple at this point. Our first speaker will be Alex, and then we have a call-in caller for next. Go ahead, please, Alex.
Thank you. You know, when I was in New Orleans a number of years ago with a friend of mine, every day we would take her dog to a park that really looked just like what we have across from City Hall and Safeway parking lot. And it was long and narrow like that. It had a bench at the end. And I've always thought that that would be a good starting place for Arcata since it's completely fenced in. It has a sort of a hill, and there's some areas to romp around if you're a dog. And then they had a bench, and they also had a place where you picked up your bag in order to pick up your dog's poop. So I would say that would be a good starting point. And I understand wanting to have something larger, but in the interim, there's been a need for something smaller for a long time, or I should say a dog park for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a phone caller. Call-in user 2 is the screen name. Please go ahead. Can you unmute?
Good evening, Council. This is Oz of Arcata. I've had, over the years, 4 service dogs in the downtown area who have long experience with the dog problem. You might say years ago, the Plaza hood went to the dogs. And it's a public safety problem for years, and it's been a really public health problem downtown. It's probably one of the most pervasive problems the Plaza's had. If you want to clean downtown, you've got to have a safe place for dogs to get out of their car and walk from the Plaza close by to relieve the dog pressure. Now, a Harmony Patrol report for your information. I take my dog out, I'll take a 55-minute walk around 3 blocks around the plaza, and in less than an hour, there's 40 different animals walking in the downtown. They're too close, too many, and it's congested. And relief there would help the public safety, would give an officer a pedestrian assist instead of a ticket for no place, and the plaza is the only place. It's just not acceptable. So from a public safety point of view, get us a bark park. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oz.
Is there anyone else attending that would like to comment on this item? Okay, no further public comment on this item, Mayor.
Great. All right, we'll bring it to the council. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I have a couple questions probably for either Emily or David, whoever has the knowledge about it. One is just, I guess the bigger question is about Little Lakes and the actual time frame that it would be usable, because I've been in several group settings where Little Lakes has come up for possible housing for homeless people. And it's my understanding that it's been made to seem like that is just far out of reach and something way down the line. So I guess, you know, I wanted to find out what really is the availability, like when would that park be usable? And then if it is usable, I think we should really consider how we're going to use it. And if it sounds like an ideal place for a dog park, but it also sounds like it's been brought up in several different places as an ideal place for safe parking and camping. So is there room for both of those on there? Or, you know, when is that going to be available? So that's kind of the bigger question. And then another question I have would just be regarding the possibility of Valley West. You know, we do want to provide some more positive activities out there. I don't know how much space we have at Carlson Park, but that seems like an appropriate place to have a dog park, but perhaps there's not enough room there.
I may look to Director Loya for your first question on status of Little Lakes project as community development is leading that effort, and then can help address other questions.
Yeah, the Little Lakes is, this may be new information for the new council members. I'm not sure how closely you tracked our former redevelopment dissolution, but the city used to have a redevelopment agency. And one of the roles of the redevelopment agency was economic development. One of the ways that it conducted economic development was by purchasing properties, clearing the constraints, and then turning them over to the private industry to do economic development activities. Little Lakes and Happy Valley were two properties that the redevelopment agency had acquired. It's a separate legal entity from the city of Arcata, had acquired prior to dissolution. And then in 2012, when the state said no more redevelopment agencies, you have to unwind these, there were certain requirements that were placed on those properties. One of the requirements is that they had to be used for the purposes that they were acquired for. And if they aren't used for those purposes, then the city basically has to pay for that asset to the other taxing entities. And so if we convert it wholesale, and I just kind of wanted to reflect back on one of the images that you saw where there was basically the entirety of Little Lakes was turned into a dog park, which would be in no uncertain terms an amazing dog park. But it would be completely inconsistent with the terms of the redevelopment agency's acquisition of that property. And so we would then have to basically come up with, approximately $1 million. We'd have to get it appraised and find out the exact number, but I'm going to guess $1 million to then pay to the taxing entities so that we could then turn it over to a dog park. So we'd lose both the asset and the money in some respects. And so we're kind of in the middle of that process. I do think that a smaller dog park could be consistent with the earlier designs that were, the conceptual designs that were made for the Little Lake properties, because there were some park amenities. They were pretty linear and kind of focused around the edges. but long story short, we're not completely through that process yet. Don't have complete access to to engage in those uses. And I would love to just as sort of a staff report at a council meeting coming up, be able to bring that and sort of go through it in more detail, kind of bring the properties to you and show you what we've done in the past, what the current planning documents are for those, and kind of move that process forward. So that we're still kind of towards the middle latter stages of being able to use that property is the short answer.
So do you have an idea of a guesstimate of how many years away we are for us to use it for whatever we choose to use it for?
Well, again, the uses are restricted. We have a plan for the property, and it's largely focused on economic development activities because that's what the agency acquired it for. And so we don't have just complete free use of it. If we use it for another use besides what it was planned for, what the Department of Finance said, yes, you can retain that asset and do this plan. Anything else we do, we would have to, basically pay for the property to retain it for another purpose. So, and again, we can get into the details in that in a separate item. And I would say that, because of COVID, I mean, frankly, I would have liked to have had this completed last year. I had, kind of spooled up energies and was, making plans. We had it in the budget 2 years ago to work on that. And because of COVID, I've really been working on other things right now than the agency dissolution. So, I don't want to overpromise. What I can tell you is that it's not currently in the budget to do a whole lot of work on that property. We're going to kind of continue to try and move the ball forward, but that's not in the current budget. We have other things that we're focused on right now. It's not to say that the council couldn't redirect me and say, hey, we're going to add that to the budget and take some other things off the plate. But we can have that conversation as well.
And then what about just the possibility of Carlson Park? Is that just too small or not ideal over there?
Yeah, a portion of Carlson Park had previously really been looked at a potential location, and for a number of the access reasons and size of open space for sightlines did not rise to the top, as well as kind of hearing from the community of looking for more public gathering spaces and playground and access for families, that we really had received direction to pursue grants for passive river access, as well as the active playground multi-use court development that our two current grant fund-seeking grants have been pursuing. And so that was, Carlson Park was looked at, and other priorities for that location had risen to the top.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councilmember Matthews.
I like that idea of that D Street linear park. Emily, we need to, so what's the next step as far as some of these other places, in particular, like the Valley West Park and the D Street linear park? Just is the next step getting community outreach on that and talking to the people in those neighborhoods?
Yes, certainly. If the council provides direction for pursuing some of these other proposed locations that really have many of those just been proposed by staff, a next step would be getting thorough neighborhood and greater community input, and also working with the dog park working group and their network for that as well. And our department would be happy to work on that. We have been given direction in this fiscal year of focusing on some of these key park updates that I had identified, and so that outreach can certainly occur as a next step with council direction.
The D Street one, is that the one that's already fenced?
The D Street location has fencing along the one side, the west the west side. And there has been community or neighborhood outreach in 2017. Letters were sent to all nearby property owners and residents, and community members provided feedback at the Parks and Rec committee. And I would say that there was a lot of concern of parking and noise, since that really is a residential location. And so we would certainly want to make sure that any siting, we can work with neighbors to make that be appropriate. And so additional outreach could occur.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Goldstein.
I have a couple thoughts. I have one question. I know what am I trying to say? I'm wondering if ticks have been, like, if there's any info on ticks at the different parks. I know with like the marsh, I have a very small, very fluffy dog, and at a certain time of year, I can't walk her at the marsh because when we get home, she has like literally 20 ticks on her. And so if there was a dog park next to the marsh, I probably wouldn't take my dog there most of the year, or like during that time of year, I should say. So I was just wondering if there's been like any research on which parks have the least like population of ticks, or what like preventative measures could be taken.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do not have that kind of research in front of me, but thinking of the habitat that ticks are often in are often longer grass, more vegetation, and type of environment that you may get in a more natural area like the marsh, versus a public area that is maintained for more like a park. And so I think a lot of the kind of maintenance and planning of the substrate for the dog park would be a key component of that, and really looking at not having long grass, or perhaps not grass at all, and using some other substrate. And I think that there would therefore be less habitat for ticks to promulgate.
Awesome, thank you. And then I appreciate the point that Councilmember or Vice Mayor Atkins Salazar brought up, just that while we do really love our dogs, I really love my dog, she's my whole world. We don't want to be taking any potential housing sites away. And so just, I think for me, just being mindful of that as we are talking about parks. And so I am more inclined to some of the already set locations that are already existing parks, that they're going to stay as parks, whether they're a dog park or not. My one hesitation, because I do also like the D Street Linear Park idea, was just that it is next to the 101, and I know my dog, again, this is all anecdotal, right? But my dog's a big jumper. She like can hop really, really high. It's kind of alarming. And so I would just be a little nervous having dogs right next to like the only fast moving street in Arcata, basically. That would be my only hesitation, because I do think it's actually a really good location. I really liked the Stewart Park location as well. And then also, I know it was brought up about putting it in Valley West and having, something nice and positive for the community in Valley West, which I think is really wonderful. But I would encourage conversation with groups like Kuna and other representatives that live in that community and represent the community, to say like, hey, we want this, or hey, this is not actually what we want as like a service in our community. But I, as somebody who does not live in Valley West, would say, hey, I think that's a great idea, but I don't, as I said, I don't live there. And so I would just encourage more conversation. But overall, I really appreciate the super thorough report. And yeah, those are my thoughts right now.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, just because mostly I agree with everything that has really already been said. I mean, obviously, the Little Lakes location stands out as probably the best, but I am also hesitant just because of, the kind of the uses that Director Loya described, and also just the fact that, yeah, we have looked at that as a possible location for housing, and, in that corridor, it does kind of make sense for possible use for that. but continuing, I mean, the exploration of that, I think is, you know, acceptable. But if we're, ending up having to, you know, pay because we're going to use a different use, and that just kind of sounds like it's all snowballing at that point. But I mean, as far as other locations, and actually, you know, places, I have my own list of places I take my dogs that probably aren't dog parks, but are acceptable. But the Stewart Park, I mean, that field there, I think, you know, obviously you need neighborhood and community input, but is a good example of, you know, pretty open line of sight, definitely enough space for that idea of kind of creation of a community park. I also kind of agree with Councilmember Goldstein that I'm a little wary of both the D Street linear and the one that's by City Hall there as just kind of being too close to the highway. Though, yeah, there is a fence. I mean, things happen, dogs dig, dogs jump, people cut fences to get places, you know, and there could be holes without even our knowledge that could, you know, and especially, I mean, those corridors there too, there's a lot of people that travel and go under the overpasses and cut fences. And I've, you know, seen disrepair in those areas too. So it might just not be the safest in my opinion. But if we're just talking about, I guess, locations that we'd like to see maybe more outreach about, or that could be, you know, good potential spots, I think the Stewart Park location, and also the entrance to Redwood Park there, the 14th and Union. And I will say that I just, you know, I take my dog to the Hiller Park dog park all the time. And one of the big draws too is having even, there's a pretty small network of trails that are off leash use, and even, you know, and this could be down the line, but possibility of expanding some of those front trails in Redwood Park that could maybe be some off leash trails as well. Just because I don't like to sit when I go to the dog park. I like to circle around and walk too. So yeah, that's kind of my input. I think Stewart sounds good. I think 14th and Union, but also exploring the Little Lakes location more could be beneficial, but I don't want to take away, you know, available land for essential housing stock that we need. So.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Stacey. You're muted.
Sorry, I wanted to kind of ask a question of Lynette, since she's here joining us and representing the group. You know, it's my understanding that the Little Lakes, you know, was what the group has their heart set on. But I guess my question is, does it still seem reasonable to have that as a potential site, given that we're looking at still, you know, looks to be several more years before it would be usable? And, you know, the possibility of it costing $1 million just to transfer it into use. It just seems very expensive and time consuming. So that's kind of what I wanted your opinion on for that.
So a couple things. One is there was no occasion when we thought that we were going to get all 11 or 12 acres of the Little Lake Industries site. Our biggest ask was for 7 acres of that site. Although the conceptual drawing, you know, somebody came up with on, you know, basically on the back of an envelope. So, we don't intend to take all the site. I think that I don't know the extent to which the property has to be used for the site that it was originally designed for, or for the idea that it was originally designed for, which is economic development. But it seems to me, you know, we could leave the upland portion of the site, the dry portion of the site, or the more dry portion of the site for economic development. A lot of the area there is low lying enough that it's not a sensible area to invest in long-term housing. It might be sensible for short-term housing, but it's not a sensible place for long-term housing because, you know, if you look at flood maps taking into account global warming, it's underwater in the long term. And so people are not going to want to put in major economic development that is long-term. Short-term, yes. So that, in fact, was one of the things that made it attractive as a dog park, because so much less infrastructure would have to go there. So I don't know, like I said, if we're only using, say, 50% of the property for a dog park, whether, you know, I don't know how the law works about how much we would have to pay in compensation under those circumstances. That's a David Loya question.
Do you have an answer, David? Is it possible just to do partial?
Yeah, and I could be really brief. I actually quickly found an image of some of the concept work, and so I just want to be clear. I agree with Lynette. I don't think the conversations have not been to use the entire site. That was just reflected in the drawing. But this is kind of a conceptual site plan for Little Lakes, and you can see that there are several areas that that were identified as sort of expansion of the marsh enhancement zone, and Jolly Giant Creek. And we have some updated, more detailed conceptual drawings that have actually this outside edge as linear park and including this area here. And again, I want to be real clear. It isn't that just these areas that are identified on this conceptual map could be used as a dog park, but that there was always a concept that there would be some sort of park amenities here. And so I think turning it into a dog park as a park amenity would be a completely reasonable use of the site. And again, the site is, at this point, nearing its sort of contamination completion. So I think we're on the middle latter end of being able to work with the site. If we dedicated a portion of the site to dog park and not the whole thing, we wouldn't be in a situation where we'd be paying for that site. This is essentially what the Department of Finance approved. So I wanted to be real clear on that. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was that, at this point, the planning for that particular site hasn't really included housing, largely due to our, adaptation planning, not wanting to put more people in an area that, would feel the impacts of climate change, of sea level rise first. And so that's really an economic asset that we're talking about there. So I hope that clears up some of the confusion that I probably introduced earlier.
It does for me. I mean, I guess, and I know we were never thinking about permanent housing there, but it was the idea of possible, like a camping space. But so I guess my opinion is that we do need to move forward, that, people have been working for this dog park for a very, very long time, for something that's pretty simple to make happen, and it doesn't seem to be that complicated. So I would like to push forward with it. And, if staff thinks that we can reasonably use a portion of Little Lakes, and that makes the people wanting the dog park happy, and it's not going to be overly expensive or time consuming for them to wait for, then I'm in favor of that. I think if we can use that property, it will be great. I just want to be realistic with our timeframes and finances.
What was the predicted time frame again, or did you have any predictions, David? I'm sorry if I missed it.
Yeah, at this point, I don't have a time frame. It's not in this current fiscal year's budget to work on that. I am continuing to push that work forward. But some of the heavy lifting is going to have to probably wait until next fiscal year.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just be perfectly frank. All of the, the work that my department's doing with COVID is, and all the managing the CD money and et cetera, it's keeping us pretty busy right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was going door to door a couple years ago, I was amazed by how many people in our city have dogs. And I would say easily 80% of the doors I knocked on, people had dogs. And the dog park was, really sought after addition to the community. And we've been talking about it for a long time. And, it does seem like it shouldn't be that hard, I guess, to designate an area as a dog park and give something to the community, at least to start with, or maybe even 2 sites. So, I mean, I'd like to see us, and I understand it's not in this year's budget, but if we do identify some extra funds, then which I think maybe we can. I'd like us to identify, a site or two that we agree on and direct the staff to, if it's whatever the first steps are, if that's engaged with the community in those areas, cost estimates, and realizing that the staff, everybody has a really full plate. It can kind of be like a back burner item, but I'd like it to be on the radar, I guess, because I don't think it made this year's goals. So do we have any further comments, councilor staff? So Sarah had suggested Stewart Park and 14th and Union. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard, support still for Little Lakes, D Street, Valley West, Stewart Park, the 14th and Union Redwood Park entrance, D Street and Stewart. I will show you, just because we had a little bit more planning, just sort of what the picture, it may help or it may hinder the closeness to 101. But this seemed to even be an adequate size, at least for an off-leash area, and it's still, so it would have a fence, plus you would still have the fence down by the freeway and pretty good visibility up there. It's not to say it's perfect, it is still very close, but the visual might help a little bit to show sort of what you could fit on that site and still have good double secure fencing for that. But then, as was shared earlier, it was not overwhelmingly supported by the neighbors in that region. But I think, especially the first site for a dog park is going to have a lot of people come to it. And we experience that anytime we do a new really cool playground, everybody wants to come to it for a while, and then they find other places and go back towards their own neighborhood. So, but to have one dog park will receive, I think, a lot of use. So, I mean, we could certainly try to narrow down some of those and get some, some kind of light conceptuals for each of those in terms of size.
And I really
recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, I've always really liked the D Street Linear Park. I mean, I totally hear the concerns about it being close to the freeway, and I don't know if that can be mitigated. Maybe it'd be good if we went, Emily and Sarah, if we walked it just to take a closer look at it. Yeah, I feel like we should consider it as a location. And also too, I mean, I definitely do still support Little Lakes. I mean, I guess my gut feels like it's going to be a long time. I mean, it's been a couple years already since I've been on the council talking about that property. Feels like it's going to be years more. And so, and as we continue to try to make progress on that property, I'd like to find something, we could have they could all be dog parks. We could have Little Lakes and some other smaller ones. I think we have enough dogs. Okay, so yeah, so I just want to get to some kind of consensus on let's just say like 2 locations, unless you guys want to do something different. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
No, that sounds good. And also thank you, Karen, for the overhead visual, because it does, me thinking about it, I was like, that seems really small. It doesn't seem like anything, but seeing the visual and how it could be offset from the freeway too, I think that sounds good. So, I mean, I think like the 2 locations that I would be most interested in would be that D Street run there, and then also the Stewart Park location, in addition to Little Lakes. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am with Sarah on that. I do like that D Street Linear Park, especially seeing it from above. And I think it'd be great to look into Stewart Park as well, in addition to Little Lakes.
All right.
Yeah, all 3 of those work for me. I think those are all good options.
Councilmember Atkins-Salazar.
Yeah, and I definitely think, even though I was hesitant for Little Lakes at first, if it has already been vetted and seems like it could happen in a reasonable amount of time, I think we should keep it on the table. And then maybe it comes down to a couple choices. Like, do we want this? We might have a site that's more immediately available, and we might have to throw it out there to see what people want. Do we want to work now on this, or do we want to continue to wait? So I agree with looking at those 3 sites. Yeah.
All right.
And also we have to find money, and we need to also spend some time looking for some money for this.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Is that good for staff?
Yeah, I think that provides some good direction. Thanks for the conversation tonight.
Yeah. All right, so before, I think our next agenda item is gonna take a fair amount of time, so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll come back for our last agenda. Our next item is new business A, discuss the potential implementation of a community ambassador program and provide any resulting direction. And I will turn this item over to Vice Mayor Atkins Salazar for a presentation.
All right, thank you. And my presentation is brief, fellow council members. I know we've been here for a while, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen and see what happens here. Let's see. All right, is everybody seeing it? Yes. Okay. So basically what I just want the council to consider, and I'm just looking for direction on what, how the rest of you feel, if this is something that we should move forward with or not. So basically a community ambassador program, which would be a possible collaboration between the city of Arcata and Arcata Main Street. So first of all, why a community ambassador? And a lot of communities are doing this as a way to help provide a combination of safety and business promotion. And that's one of the things that I think we've all been hearing, is that people aren't feeling safe in our community in a lot of different areas. And so you'll notice in the description, I've mentioned downtown a couple of times. But this doesn't have to be limited to our downtown. I think we do need to start, if we choose to do it, we need to pilot it somewhere, but if it's a successful program, it could expand to cover different areas of the city. But basically, by providing this type of program, it will help provide a sense of safety and also help direct people to local businesses and community events, as well as keep our streets clean. So what is a community ambassador? And basically it's up for us to decide, but I researched several different communities and kind of pulled from the programs the things that I thought were the most important. And I'm not going to go through all the details now, because obviously we need to decide if this is even something that we are interested in doing as the council. But basically it can factor as added security. In the programs that I liked, their ambassadors were trained as security guards. And I think that that was important because they know when to call in for help. They're trained to know when to engage with the police for backup, which I'm sure would be much needed. So it would, ensure that our public spaces are safe. They could be observing and reporting unwanted behaviors and addressing low-level quality of crimes like open containers, smoking, aggressive panhandling. They wouldn't just be security, it would also be for hospitality and customer services. So, to work with the members of Main Street or, whatever part of the community they're in. So if it was in Valley West or in Northtown or whatever, to work with the business owners very directly to see what their needs are, because we've been hearing a lot from business owners with issues in their businesses and safety issues, as well as just encouraging people to shop. And it could also help with clean streets. One of the things that some of the ambassadors do is like early in the morning when if they come on to shift, and again, that would be something that we would decide, what are the shifts? What does this job look like? But part of it could be picking up on the streets, trash pickup when things are slower, and alerting city maintenance to issues that are happening. So that's what it looks like. And I don't know, on my screen, everything isn't really showing, but I can tell you, I looked up our current goals and to see, like, does this fit in with what we're moving towards? And I think that, yes, it's an important piece of some of our goals and puzzles. If you look at these for 4B in the for infrastructure, this is mentioned in the Plaza Improvement Task Force recommendations. 5D and economic recovery strategies to promote businesses and tourism and advertise Arcata as a safe place to shop. And right now people aren't really feeling that it's safe. So it does tie into some of our goals. If you look directly at the Plaza Improvement Task Force recommendations, there were 5 general recommendations, and I think that this easily fits into 4 out of 5 of those. Definitely safety regulation, help with beautification and infrastructure, increase programming. If we have more of a sense of safety and a presence on the plaza, more people will want to be there, which also ties into economic development. Doesn't necessarily fit the fifth one about increasing access to the plaza and connectivity to HSU and Creamery, but does meet 4 out of 5. And that was taken from page 42 on the report. So just considerations for all of us. Is this something that we think would be beneficial to our community? I have been talking with Chief Ahern about this to just see if it's in line with what he thinks would be beneficial. And as of our last conversation, he encouraged me to go forward with it. He also, we talked about oversight for it and that it would need to be kind of a shared oversight with possibly Main Street and the police department. And he was willing to help take that on. Where would funding come from? I'm proposing that if we're able to, that we use some of our ARPA funding to pay for a pilot program. If this is successful, it's been successful in other communities, so I don't see why it wouldn't be successful here. And if it was, then, I think that it's our job to start this and pilot it. And then if it's working, we could reach out to the business owners once we see that it's successful and they see that it's successful, and figure out how we could share the cost. So it's not just us sharing it the whole time. So, other considerations that we would need to talk about: personnel, job description, where do we want to pilot this program? So that's my presentation, just wanting to get feedback from council as to whether or not this is something that we should be moving forwards to. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or whatever.
It looks like, did we lose Councilmember Matthews?
Yes. So I have texted her to see if she needs help.
Okay.
We'll see. Had some audio problems, but here she comes. She's coming back in.
Right.
So hopefully she will be here shortly. And here she comes.
Great. Okay, so we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Schaefer, you have any thoughts or questions?
Sure. First of all, Stacey, thank you so much for a quick and concise and clear presentation. I mean that you got the point across perfectly, and I really think this is something that could be really beneficial in Arcata. I talked a lot to people about even developing someday down the line, hoping for it, like a visitor center with some sort of museum and stuff like that. But eventually down the line, having a person that maybe, if we're piloting it, on the plaza and stuff, could easily, work at a city hall or something, have a place to stash their stuff, whatever. But ultimately having some sort of even informational center or kiosk, even where, there's information about what to do downtown, what businesses, what eateries, whatever. But yeah, I think piloting this, and especially if we could use ARPA funds, it's very, enticing to try something like this. The only, thing that I would just say is my reservation, or just to make sure about just that whoever is doing this job is well trained in conflict resolution and equity training, and especially recognizing implicit bias of why you are calling the cops on somebody. Because when you often give people the power to police others, they will take that and run and have a power trip about it. And so, I don't want to see negative policing of ourselves, among our community. And so just making sure, that these community ambassadors truly are, ambassadors of our community, and that, kind of reflect all of these, ideas that we talk about as a council, and, that they reflect equity, and that they reflect, compassionate response to, homeless people that might be on the, I'm going to say Plaza because we kind of talked about that as a part, but wherever they might be, just that, whoever is doing this job is truly an ambassador, and is doing it in an informed way, that they understand bias, they understand equity, and that they, aren't just policing in essence of, policing the community. But besides, that's part of training a person to do a job and to do it well. And so I think, just finding the right people and training them well is going to be important. But I think having something like this in our community could be enormously beneficial. And I thank you for bringing this before us. And I saw on the next item, it looks like it could be something that could be funded, but it's kind of on the line of the ARPA funds. And so I guess just an additional conversation, and that could be something that staff looks at, just of, if we can't fund it with ARPA, where does this come from? How much money are we willing to put in it, basically, as a council, to pay for it in our budget? But I think it sounds great. So that's what I got.
Thank you. And just to, I totally agree with you. Just in my discussions of the program, the one thing that everyone has really agreed upon is that finding the right people will be probably the hardest part of the program, because originally I was pitching it as a safety ambassador, because that's what some of the other communities call it. But we've changed the title to be community and to be it's not just, otherwise we could just hire a security guard, right? Or more police, and that's not what we're looking to do. So it really does have to be the right combination and the right personality that is making our downtown feel safe and vibrant to everyone, including the people that they're quote unquote kind of policing, so I totally agree with that.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you so much for bringing this, Stacey. I think you did a lot of hard work. I have a lot of thoughts, no surprise, but I think that I'm really encouraged by basically every aspect of this except for the safety part of it. I think that there are a lot of great benefits that you talked about in terms of supporting our local businesses, helping people around the, the community. And I really love those ideas. But I don't think this is something I can support in terms of safety. It feels just like adding more police without putting a badge on them. And that's not something I can support. I know we are saying like, we have to find the right people. But I think that policing is not going to solve the problems in our community of any kind, even if it's policing by community members. And so to me, it feels like a Band-Aid fix. When people are saying they're unsafe in this community, it's really a coded thing that they're saying to us. They're saying they don't want to look at homeless people. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to be really real about that, because I get a lot of emails from folks, actually not that many, because I get a lot of folks that want housing and to support homeless people. But I'm just going to say very honestly, if you send me an email disparaging homeless people because they make you feel unsafe because you don't want to look at them, I'm not really going to take that seriously, because they have a right to be in this community too. And so I think that's a lot of the safety that I'm hearing lately. And I just don't buy it. If we want to fix our safety issues because we don't want people living on the street, or we're concerned about their mental health issues or their drug use, then we need to be looking at the root of the problem instead of Band-Aid fixes. And so this isn't like anything specifically like against this specific program. I feel like this is the conversation we keep having again and again, is how do we make people feel safer instead of how do we actually solve our problems? And so I would really encourage us to take a step back and look more upstream. Where is the root of our problem? And we've identified it, right? Those were our council goals. We need to get people housed. We need more mental health services. We need drug treatment services. And so to me, I can't get on board with just more policing of our community members. Crimes like panhandling are not crimes to me. Yes, technically they're illegal, but it's somebody who has no other choice. I don't think any of us would say like, hey, I'm going to give up my day job to stand on the corner and beg people for money. I think most people would agree that that feels really degrading to have to do. So to me, that's not a crime. That's not something that people should feel unsafe around. If somebody asks you for money, you can politely say no, or you can give them money. I mean, yes, I'm aware that's illegal, but that can be a different conversation. And so I don't know. We are living in a time where we see so many videos of, I mean, well, let's just be honest, angry white people who call the cops because something's making them uncomfortable, right? And it ends very badly for the person that's making them uncomfortable. And to me, the safety aspect of this feels like another way to do that, to sanction people to just call the cops whenever they feel uncomfortable. And so I want to get to the root of our problems. I don't want to put band-aids on our problems. So again, I would be super for these community ambassadors supporting our businesses and doing other things that improve our city, but I am not for adding police that are just not wearing uniforms.
And I do absolutely agree with you in that it does. I mean, in a sense, it is a Band-Aid. I'm willing to acknowledge that, but I do think we need to go to the root of where our problems are. But these are really big, hard, long conversations, and we do have people that need some relief. And I am not talking about, I said aggressive panhandling, because when you get emails from people that say that they have been grabbed and chased and different things for refusing, that's different. It's one thing to say yes or no, but to be physically attacked, spit on and such, isn't okay. And our police force is spread really thin. So I do think we have safety concerns, and I do think we need to go to those bigger issues as well. But I think it's much bigger than just white people being uncomfortable. I mean, of course, there is going to be that, but I'll just bring up a story that's pretty vivid. A couple of weeks ago, I was eating outside at Renata's, and a woman came up. There was a table right next to us with a family of 4. She pulled her pants down and spread her butt cheeks apart to show us some sores that she had. This was a pretty intense situation for that family, for us. Clearly she wasn't trying to, it wasn't in a sexual way. She was found out later to be really on drugs were a factor in the situation, amongst some other things. So there was more to it. But in that moment, the only resource we had was to call APD, who happened to be able to come and handle the situation. But it would just be nice in those things to have more presence and more support. So I just want to argue against the fact that we're just seeing a lot of, that it's just harmless things, because there are serious things that are happening. There are drug deals and cars going down. They're not necessarily people of color doing that, and that's happening right on the plaza. So it'd be nice to have more of a presence, from my opinion. So.
No, and I mean, I'm sorry that happened to you, because that is a pretty awful experience when you're trying to just enjoy your breakfast. But I think that, like, my thinking is that, that person gets, APD comes, they do their thing, they arrest the person, and then they just go back on the street. Mm-hmm. So because we are talking about spending funds on this, I would really prefer to see our funds go towards something more permanent that keeps the next family who's eating at Renata's to not have that experience. And so, I think, yes, it's comforting in the moment to be able to call, a community ambassador or APD, but then that person ends up back on the street doing the exact same thing the next week. And so I really am looking for, like, long-term solutions that will, get that person help, and then keep the rest of the folks that are just trying to eat their breakfast, on G Street, to get to enjoy their breakfast on G Street. Because both groups deserve that, right? Like, that lady deserves her help, and people who are just trying to enjoy their Saturday or whatever deserve that as well. I'm just not sure extra policing is really going to change much.
Okay,
Right.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Councilmember Matthews.
So unfortunately, Stacy, I'm so sorry. I missed that presentation. I was having audio issues and trying to log on and log back off. So I think it seems like there's a lot of really important things brought up by everybody, but I just don't think at this moment, having not seen Vice Mayor's presentation, I'm in a really good spot to weigh in. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's not your fault that you got bumped out.
You want to kind of quickly do a summation, Stacy, for Veritas' benefit?
Yeah, it was just a bottom line is it's a combination, like half security guard, half business promoter that would roam a particular area of town and could, provide, if somebody's feeling nervous, they could provide a safe escort to their car, or also can promote businesses and what's going on downtown. So it's like a half and half position, and that's pretty much what it is.
Sure. So what are the hours that this position would be? I mean, is it going to be an evening position? Is it all the time? Is it a daytime position?
So those would be all details that we would work out if council wants to move forward on it. So I spent some time doing research, but not delving too far into it because I don't know if it's something that the whole council wants to do. So like, as far as, what type of training, job description, how many people, where, those would all be details that staff would work on, and probably with, reach out to Main Street and some of the businesses downtown, if that's where we chose to pilot the program. So yeah, there's still a lot of details that would need to be worked out, but it's mostly just trying to get a sense from the council if this is something that we should move forward on or not.
All right, well, with that context, I will say that I am in favor of moving forward with this, just if not anything, but to kind of get some more fact finding and talk to local businesses and see what it would look like. I agree that it would definitely have to be the right person. I like the idea, of an ambassador, more like letting people, someone during, Arts Arcata, walking around and pointing out things that people can do. I feel like Main Street's been doing such a great job having all sorts of events that fill up the plaza. I think it would be wonderful to have, someone. I would love to have like a kiosk that they could be at and be like a central location for people to come and get information on things. So yeah, I definitely think it bears more discussion and moving forward.
Right, thank you.
Did you have any more thoughts, Councilmember Schaefer?
No, and just in the sense that, I don't know, maybe I tried to say it too nice. But yeah, I mean, I like the partnership with Main Street, and I like the idea of having some sort of community ambassador that could give people directions and information and promote our businesses, especially like Councilmember Matthews just said during Arts Arcata, everything like that, during farmers market, the Sunday art markets that have been going on, having a touch point there. But just to reiterate what I said before and kind of maybe more swing towards what Councilmember Goldstein said, to have a lot of scrutiny looking at this policing piece and whether it's necessary at all, what training that means, and what's going on there. And as I said before, that is the part that concerns me about it. But I think, I don't know, we're going to have another discussion about what to spend the ARPA funds on. So I think, seeing where that falls down to and what kind of things we want to support, I think, it just depends on where our funding falls to and what we can and can't fund and support. So
that makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'd like to move this idea forward with an emphasis on the community ambassador piece of it. It sounds like we all agree that the community ambassador piece is something we can get behind. And I think it would be an interesting experiment to see if it, helps promote tourism and some economic recovery, helping out our local businesses. So yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I totally hear the concerns about additional policing, and I don't know how effective the community ambassador would be in that role. I think anybody can that's on the plaza can use their phone and call the police if they need help, and the community ambassador can still be there to help people, walk their purchases to their vehicles and stuff like that. So that's how I feel about it. And do we, unless there's any more discussion, I think we should. Well, yeah, it is in our next conversation, but I'd like to put more I'd like to finalize this a little more, because it does seem like we have support. And I think our next discussion is more of a general discussion that we'll probably come back and have a special meeting for in the future. So I'd like to entertain a motion. Go ahead.
Mayor, would you like to take public comment at all? Or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we did already. Go ahead. Thank you, Jeanette.
It looks like we have one at this point. Shoshana, do you want to go ahead, please? You'll have 2 minutes.
Hello. I just think that this is a wonderful idea. Main Street is right downtown on the plaza, and it is that visitor space that does serve some of that purpose, but it's not really funded to have an office hours open right now. But people have experiences in all the areas that they go to, and those negative experiences really do stick with people. And I think this is an awesome idea as a pilot program that could be wonderful to keep. The idea that this could happen downtown, it could happen in Valley West, I think is really marvelous to keep that downtown area nice with picking up so the wonderful CPP buckets and pickers are wonderful, easy, and just having someone out and about doing some of those things, as well as keeping an eye on situations. And it's not just that people don't want to look at homeless people. It's, as I just saw tonight walking here from the office, that there is a guy who is yelling at multiple groups of people who are on the plaza drinking a beer and trying to pick a fight. And numerous people watching on the outskirts of the plaza, tourists who were wondering if someone should call the police, and I called them, and they had already heard from 2 other people about this guy, and I stuck around for a few minutes, and then they came and checked in with the guy in a few minutes. And I also directed someone to sushi, and I picked up a little bit of litter in the plaza. So I was just walking it right before making this comment. I think you can definitely see where this would be a useful thing. And if there was something happening in the afternoon, evening time, that 4 to 9 p.m., Wednesday to Saturday, wouldn't that be a great time when so many people are out and about walking around, and just an informed eye on what's going on, someone who was trained to know when to call and assess the situation properly and appropriately, and with all of the good mindful processes in place. But I think it's a good idea for a pilot and very needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Shoshana. Any more public comment?
Just taking one last check. If there's, yes, we do. It looks like we have a phone caller, screening call-in user 2, and then we'll have a phone caller user 7 next. Please go ahead. Can you unmute yourself, caller? There you go.
This is Harmony Patrol of Arcata speaking. The downtown plaza has been claimed as a ghetto. The kids downtown look at the garbage every day, and why would they have respect for a place? The business community needs assistance ASAP with neighborhood people. How about city council members coming down and having lunch on the plaza? We need to take our plaza back, and there are several ways we can do it. Brick and mortar stores need traffic, more activity, and somebody to coordinate that. I'll train the next ambassador, Harmony Patrol, if you need it. Let's do it as a community. Come to the plaza and enjoy it, and let's all take it back. By whatever means necessary. We're all in this together. It's the downtown living room of my city and yours. Let's own it. The real problem now is the increased activity by Mephistopheles himself, and he has bad breath. It's called meth. We have a problem, and it needs monitored. I nominate Bart Simpson to hall monitor. Whatever it takes, let's assist APD to get this downtown area, my plaza hood, cleaned up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another phone caller and then another phone caller after that. Please go ahead, user 7. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, you're good. Go ahead.
Hi, this is a concerned citizen calling. So I noticed that there's lights at the tennis court, but I think the #1 priority should be of the Parks and Rec department is to bring lights to the Arcata skate park. Because
No, I'm
people
sorry,
can
but
use the
this
tennis court.
comment period is for the agenda item we're currently talking about. If you wait a little bit longer towards the end of the meeting, we will have another comment period where you can talk about anything you want.
All right, I will call back. Lights to the skate park. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, caller. There you go. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Ellie Noah. I am a community member in Arcata, a graduate of HSU, and I just want to voice again, I know I've called in before and just really reiterated the importance of trained professional mental health support for anyone who may be needing support in our community. I don't think that.
Yeah, is this about the current agenda item?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the community ambassador program.
Yes.
Yep, it is. I think that it is imperative that we invest adequate funds to support our community from the issues at their foundation. I think if we have a reactive model that promotes reacting to people who may have struggled in our community, it's not going to solve any problems that may arise, rather than simply coming to the aid of the most privileged in our community. And so I think that really supporting people from the ground up, whether that's money and funding for mental health support, drug rehabilitation, housing, food insecurity, those are the things that I personally would like to see funding go toward, rather than perhaps less qualified and trained version of the police, which again, I really think that we can redirect funding from our police budget into mental health support that's going to really strengthen the health, well-being, and overall safety, I guess, of our community in a way that is actually supporting every person, not just the people who are able to call someone at any point to keep them safe, because that's how our society is currently designed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Any
right.
more public comment?
Taking one last check, if there's anyone that would like to speak on the community ambassador item. Looks like we have no further comment on this item.
All right. So bringing it back to the council, go ahead, Councilmember Salazar.
All right, well, just so that we can, we can move forward, I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to look more into this type of a program and bring more information back to council.
I will second that.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like we could maybe put more teeth in it, like, besides just look, I mean, you've already kind of, I don't know, I feel like we've already kind of looked into it and we already have a cost estimate for the program. So I don't know if we want to, I mean, what do you think, Karen? Can we give more direction?
Always the more direction, the better.
Well, I think maybe, when we go, I know we're not going to probably dig into the ARPA details today, but when we go to dig into them, I think, and we start debating what we want to spend our money on, it seems like, I mean, the council is pretty much aware of the basics of my program, and obviously it could be crafted however we choose. But if, so maybe we just move forward in discussing this when we're debating what we want to do with the ARPA money.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Schaefer.
But do we have a motion in a second? Because
yeah, what was the sorry? What was the
yeah, because I made a motion to motioned for staff.
Meredith seconded. I think
Right.
Meredith seconded.
Yeah, I was just directing staff to do more research into it, and Meredith did second that. But then, Mayor, you brought up that I had already done the research, so you weren't really sure what staff needed to do. So
yeah. That's fine. We can leave it at that if that's what you'd like. It's your motion, so we can just have staff come back with more information.
okay, then that's my motion. Thank
All
you.
right. Sounds good. So we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Schaefer.
No.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Matthews.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
No.
Man, it's just to come back with more information. I'm going to vote aye. I really want to, focus on the community part of it. I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and I feel like we can do it in a way that's, not going to be adding some kind of quasi police presence or, intimidating people. And I feel like we can do it in a way to just, just to be overall beneficial to the community. And I think we have some other things that we're also going to be working on to provide support for the houseless and other people in need. So with that, we will move on to the next agenda item. Which is discuss and provide direction of potential uses for the city's allocation of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, so we'll just walk through quickly tonight, Mayor and Council, just some of the very basics of what we call ARPA, often the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. In Congress and President Biden signed on March 11th, 2021, a $1.9 trillion relief package referred to as ARPA. The preliminary guidance for that was released on May 10th, and that's what we've been working off of. We do anticipate final guidance on how all of the funds can be used and additional details on sort of reporting on those uses, hopefully within the next month, maybe even by the end of the month. Of that 1.9 trillion, 350 billion was set aside for state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. And of that, Arcata has been allocated $4.409087 million. So 50% of that has already reached our bank account, was paid to us in 2021. And the second installment, the other 2.2 million, will be coming in 2022. The U.S. Department of Treasury has released some initial eligibility guidance. It is an interim rule. As I mentioned, the final ruling has not come out, but they do have frequently asked questions that are updated weekly, and staff has been following those questions as well. The initial funding objectives of ARPA was to support the urgent COVID-19 response efforts, to replace lost revenue, to strengthen support for public sector and retain jobs, to support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses, and address the systematic public health and economic challenges contributing to really disparate impact of the pandemic. The interim rule categorizes eligible expenditures into 4 categories: to respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, to respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency by providing premium pay, for the provision of government services to the extent that the reduction in revenue, meaning reduction in sales tax for us, TOT tax in us, and actually all of our revenues, reductions in those revenues due to COVID-19, provision for government services to be able to recoup some of those losses, and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. So we've given you a kind of a large list of potential projects in Arcata. We have put that into two categories, one that we think well fits within the current interim guidelines of the ARPA funds, and others that have come to the surface that we think may be able to fit in those categories, but we would have to do a little bit more staff research. So the types of uses that we've seen so far throughout the nation are responding directly to COVID impact, testing and contact tracing, capital investments in public facilities, vaccination campaigns, doing direct response to the economic impacts, household and small business assistance programs, relief programs for individual. We've seen like utility programs, although there are some other funds that have been set aside now for utility relief programs. Payroll costs to rehire, especially public sector staff, that positions that were frozen or positions that were laid off during the pandemic. Direct aid to impacted industries, affordable housing investment, homeless services. There is a provision for what we talked about as this revenue loss calculation. And so we are waiting to make sure we have the final guidelines, and we will make that calculation for the council and bring that back to you as we get further into these ARPA discussions. But so I won't even go into the details because I will lose all of us, I think. And but there will be a calculation of that. I anticipate that number to fall somewhere between probably $1 million to maybe $1.6 million of lost revenue that the city would be able to recoup. And therefore, then that revenue kind of becomes free for really any of the type of eligible use or any of the types of uses that the council is interested, even if they don't perfectly fit in to the high eligible use categories. Water sewer infrastructure, projects to improve water quality, reduce, I should say, water pollution, repair wastewater treatment plants, creation of green infrastructure, energy resiliency projects we've seen come up in other communities, manage or treat stormwater, water reuse, cybersecurity, and projects to address climate change, and then direct allocation towards broadband infrastructure. Restriction of the funds, just to kind of keep these high in our mind, we can't deposit into pension funds or reduce any of our unfunded liability into PERS. We can't offset a reduction in net tax revenue that was the result from a change in a law or regulation. We can't use funds as really what we call our non-federal match for eligible other federal programs. And then the funds must be expended between March 3rd of 2021 and December 31st of 2026. We do need to obligate them. We do need to report on the eligible uses by December 31st of 2024. But we've got a little bit of time that we can spend to make sure that we spend these correctly. And then premium pays, if we're looking at those, can be retroactive to the start of the public health emergency. So again, just looking through those obligated dates, we need to obligate everything by 2024. So that's sort of the quick overview. I thought we could spend sort of the majority of the time tonight. I can pull up, I believe it did not print very well for you, the draft project list. I was not anticipating to have a detailed discussion of each of those projects tonight, although we certainly could do that. But more just to make sure that you as a council had a chance to brainstorm, to provide some overall insights or thoughts that you had. Many of you haven't even had a chance to give input into what you'd like to see on that list yet. We have tried to pull a list of projects from things that came up through the budget goal setting, through the stakeholder meetings, through projects that we were unable to fund, and then look at those eligible categories within the ARPA funds to come up with the list that's before you. So that's pretty all-inclusive. There's a lot more than $4.4 million there. Many of those projects are scalable and don't need to be funded at that full amount. We just kind of put some initial estimates in there of really what a full program might look like for you in those projects. So I'm happy to pull that list up or go a different direction depending on how you'd like to lead this discussion tonight, Mayor.
So let's ask, did everyone on the council get a chance to look through the kind of the staff recommendations or staff requests? It's okay if you didn't, you know if we need to walk through it or not. So if we've all had a chance to look through it, then let's start with if we have any individual ideas to add to the list. And then maybe we can just kind of quickly, like I have some ideas of things that I would like to just, tell staff that, I'd like to move forward with, or, I feel like kind of lock in. So let's start with Councilmember Goldstein.
Sorry, I was just pulling up the list real quick, going through my packet. Is this add or things that I want to focus on, or both?
Add. Do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, I don't think so, no.
Okay. Councilmember Schaefer.
I don't see on here, but it probably falls under Arcata House Partnership, something about creating a transitional camping site, which I know all of us have talked about and are excited about and have been working on. So I don't straight up see that on the list, but I guess that probably falls under Arcata House, maybe.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I would have totally forgot. Today, we had our homelessness services working group meeting, and I asked that very question to the group. What can we do to create a camp? And I mean, the number I had thrown out was that would serve 100 people or more, because I think we have maybe a couple hundred homeless in the city, and they just felt like Darlene with Arcata House and some of the other professionals there felt like a camp that size was not manageable. And it would need tons of staff, and they felt like if we wanted to do something, that it would be better to have 10 camps of 10 people, because they felt like that was a more manageable number. And then a lot of these people are really high needs, like they have healthcare needs, mental health needs, so it would just require a lot of staff. So, but there are also some. Darlene is also working on adding another 20 or so beds at her Boyd Road property, and we had a conversation about creating a safe parking area. So I think, talking with ARPA funds, that maybe those are some things we can contribute to.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think camping / safe parking, especially with the emails and comments we received about the situation down at the community center health sport parking lot too. Just having some safe parking, camping, and 100 seems like a lot, but maybe like 10 to 25 is more doable, and I think anything is good. So that's the one thing I'd want to see added, but I think a lot of these things fall under the scope of but also Arcata House has a lot to do too. So if we could fund it separately also, but so nothing else to add, I think.
Right. Did you have something, Karen?
No, I just to make sure to clarify that what they are talking about would be, kind of 10 2-person, very low barrier shelters that would just be located on the Boyd Road, on their Boyd Road site, but it would be separate from their congregate sheltering. So I think much more in line with what we're talking about as being low barrier transitional housing, not exactly in a tent because we want them to make it there through the winter, but in some sort of hard covered, small barrier free space. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Matthews.
Yeah, I would like to see something added that really addresses climate change and green energy infrastructure and what we can do.
We do have an item on there that is
my eyes are very bad.
City Hall heating and ventilation, convert south side of City Hall to all electric heating.
Okay.
There's one item kind of along those lines. Okay, so we can add that to see if that's something that we can qualify for.
Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think the best way to go about this. We don't have, doesn't sound like we have any new ideas in addition to what's here. But you know what, I think the best thing to do is to have a special meeting just to talk about this, because it's such a large sum of money. And that would also give everybody more time. This is our opportunity. This doesn't come around very often, if ever, a pool of money like this. And this is our opportunity to do projects we think will benefit the community. So we'll work on scheduling a special meeting just to discuss this topic, and then that'll give us all a little more time to discuss stuff. Yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot of things on here I liked. Valley West neighborhood support, economic recovery. I definitely liked all the stuff about adding more personnel. I'd like to see us add as much personnel as we can, just to take off some of the workload of our current staff and to maybe get caught up or get ahead on some things around the city. And yeah, so I guess we'll leave it at that. We'll do a special meeting and then have further discussion on this. Do we have any public comment on this?
Are there any public comment? Yes, we do. Is that you, Oz?
Oz of Arcata. Council, I'm so happy that after 30 years of experience with unhoused persons in our community, that you have an opportunity to do something substantial with our situation as it is all over the country. I want you to consider these funds, consider the 4 objectives, the 4 pillars of freedom. The first pillar of freedom is the freedom from want of potable water or nutritious food. The second pillar of freedom is the right to a living wage job and the dignity of work. And the third pillar of freedom is the right to health, mental health, physical health, and all health that helps you to create your wealth. Your health is your wealth. And the right to a safe, inclusive space to live in peace, in comfort, and dignity. A home, a house. And that comes from policy. And you have an opportunity to consider these 4 pillars of freedom as you make your decision on how to move us into a green, clean, safe, inclusive space, free from intimidation, harassment. I have a dream for my city tonight, Council, that on the perimeter of our city a post be placed. Upon the post affixed a sign stating clearly and eminently, City of Arcata, a human rights violation-free zone, with the numbers of section, statute, and ordinance placed there upon it, so that the whole city can celebrate our humanity. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oz.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? No more public comment on this item.
All right. Great. Next, we will move on to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council may be limited to 3 minutes, with a maximum of 5 minutes, and a time limit on the overall length of oral communications may be imposed. Do we have any public comment?
There does not appear to be any public comment.
Great. So we have council and staff reports.
I just have one quick announcement tonight, Mayor and Council, and that is that the Equity Arcata Network Manager position was posted today on the HSU website. That position is going to be housed out of HSU this go around. The past couple of years, the city has held that contract, but we're going to move it. HSU is going to add additional funding to it, so it will be a full-time benefited position offered at HSU, and will support Equity Arcata's network. So anyone who's interested and has a background in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, would like to support Equity Arcata's network, please jump onto the HSU website and check out the job.
All right, great. Do we have any reports from council? How about Council Member Matthews? Anything you'd like to report out your first meeting? Whatever you want. Nope. All right. Council Member Schaefer.
Just one small update. Recently installed in partnership with Road Coast Energy Authority, with RCA, which is the board I'm on, 4 new charging stations at the community center. So a total of 8 cars can be charging at once over there, and just a nice new addition, and hopefully is helpful to our community and attracts folks and makes it an easy stopping place for those traveling with electric vehicles. So right on Arcata, right on our CEA.
Great. Councilmember Goldstein.
Nothing to report, thanks.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No, nothing to report.
All right. Got nothing to report. I just want to, give a big welcome to Councilmember Matthews. It's nice to have a complete council now, and yeah, looking forward to the next year and a half serving with you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.